Hello and welcome to the Chicago Business Spotlight. Today I'm here with Jake Clopton of Clopton Capital. And so first, just to start it off, so what is Clopton Capital and then why did you guys start?
So our company is a commercial real estate finance intermediary. What we do is we act as an intermediary and a broker between owners and operators of commercial real estate and capital sources looking to finance commercial real estate projects. We've been around for about 12 years. The types of projects that we end up financing are nationwide projects, pretty much all asset types, and primarily in the $1 to $50-60 million financing size range. Perm, bridge, construction, and then we're also quite involved in higher capital stack products like mezzanine, pref equity, and joint venture financing.
Great. I definitely want to touch on the loan size and stuff like that a little later on, but just also, so how long did you guys started in Chicago?
Yeah,
Okay.
Chicago based whole time. I was originally a interest rate hedging products trader, features products, LIBOR and Fed funds, treasury, stuff like that. And then around the 2008-ish, 9-ish time, which we all know what happened then, rates kind of went to zero. So we were, looking for, a different kind of business strategy and went towards arranging commercial paper. My commercial, kind of banking background comes from the hedging products trading.
So what was it about the construction and real estate side that you felt drawn to?
Well, so the way that our business works is by finding people capital that, generally speaking, are having difficulty finding it and or accessing secondary markets that really aren't available through local bank lending. Construction financing is always something that, depending on what it is, can have a little bit of a difficulty getting through in the local bank level, and or, you guys want to access secondary financing for specific terms. So as far as construction goes, it's, definitely a finance product that, is pretty common for like commercial brokers to work on in place.
Okay. Yeah. So how many employees do you guys currently have under you?
We have 5. So, we're a smaller team, but we do, probably a couple $100 million a year worth of financing. So it doesn't take a lot of people to do, a lot of work. Yeah. We've got several people that basically are mainly, networking outreach, kind of reaching out to people or staying in touch with our clients. We got some back end kind of underwriting and support staff. And then, I handle a lot of the face-to-face and day-to-day with our capital sources and our clientele.
Great. When you were first getting everything established and you needed that first, however much the first loan must have been, where did you get that initial capital from? Was that a personal investment or were you going to outside sources for that?
No, so we always go to outside sources, right? So, the money always ends up coming from a third-party capital source. Getting the first, I think, whatever it is done in any business is probably usually always a challenge, right? Mm-hmm. From what I can remember, I believe, the first loan we closed like 12 years ago was with a bank, actually for like a Chicago retail property. I think the first loan we did was somewhere around like $3 million or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
I know, it's been a long time.
Yeah. That's exciting though, to get into the market and the first thing being a $3 million loan. That's an exciting area.
Yeah. I mean, since that time we closed $60 million loans, yeah. Right? But the first one, it was awesome. And the way that I kind of got into this industry, right, was, I didn't work for a bank originating loans before. I didn't work for another mortgage broker that really kind of like taught me the business and the ropes. Honestly, having the interest rate background, if you kind of had the thesis of finding capital for, commercial real estate operators and business operators. And we really started just making phone calls to people. I mean, at the time, we were kind of in the middle of a banking crisis. So there was a lot of, illiquidity in the system, I guess to say. So, if we were able, at that time, kind of 2008, 9, we were able to really find almost any liquidity for, for lending. People would just kind of come. So.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So what is your most common form of financing usually?
The vast majority of, I think, everyone's volume ends up being, just kind of like commercial mortgages, right? So whatever form that takes, in whatever capital source it comes from. So a lot of the stuff we'll do is, just regular commercial property deals, 5 to 10 year fixed, 25 to 30-year amortization. A lot of the stuff we do is non-recourse. So people come to us kind of access secondary markets, if they're looking for non-recourse financing or cash out or stuff like that. Generally speaking, terms that you just can't walk into a local retail bank and get.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you were on like the opposite side, let's say you were your own client, what would you go for if you wanted to enter the corporate real estate space? Like if I was looking to buy a building, what is the best type of loan that I should be looking for?
A lot of that is really going to depend on, who you are, right? If you were just starting out, I think, anybody that's buying, let's say, maybe their first or second property is most likely going to be looking for a high amount of leverage, because when, leverage equals growth, right? So as you're growing and as you want to grow and buy more assets, you're going to need leverage, which is basically, a loan, to really get that and to access more assets. Generally speaking, brokers for the most part are able to access markets where we can get higher loan to values than most local banks are going to give out. So, for instance, some of the highest loan to values you're going to get out there is against apartment buildings. So we can do, either agency finance or CMBS, or maybe even like, a bank that, works well with, mortgage brokers to get up to like 80% loan to value. You're really not going to get that high with any other kind of like loan, property type or loan type.
So the rise in material prices has had a bit of a problem for you, and then also obviously on the construction end has caused skyrocketing in prices of lumber and steel. So how has that affected your company? And then also what changes are you making to make sure that you guys are going to be solidified for the next year?
Right. So a lot of the inflation that we're seeing in input prices, right, through, either just higher commodity prices or lumber, or steel, or whatever it is, a lot of it's coming from, really twofold. I mean, one, you still have a lot of COVID restrictions, right? So for instance, in the lumber mills, you've got, distancing and COVID restrictions that are really just slowing down, their ability to, get lumber out the door. Additionally, now you've got trillions of dollars in stimulus that is really propping up the economy. So you have, substantially increasing demand at the same time with, very constrained supply. So, right. So lumber prices are going up like through the roof. What that's translating to for us is, two great examples are, one is projects that were around pre-COVID. And, some of those are, weren't able to get financing before because of what happened. Now they're coming back around, and before we even, take the next step to kind of arrange financing for those guys and those old, like, kind of legacy projects, we're having to go back and get, rebid from their GCs. I mean, I've seen some projects come back as much as like 15, 20% higher than they were previously, mainly because of input costs. Not really seeing as much like because of like labor costs rising substantially, but it's really just like the hard input costs that are causing problems. Additionally, other guys, wanting to, start new construction projects, some of them are, starting to get delayed a little bit, thinking that if they wait till later, later this year or like next year, lumber and like, steel prices might come down a bit. Ultimately, I think what's going to make the prices end up coming down is just, yeah, you're right, the same thesis. As things open more up, as vaccines are given out, as COVID restrictions ease, you'll get more supply into the market. Yeah, but as far as financing, I mean, financing is always just a math problem, right? I can still finance the project, but it probably will take more equity because my end value is still going to be my constraint, right? So it doesn't really matter how much I'm, they're building it for. I'm still constrained against, like X leverage against the stabilized value of the project. So ultimately, some of these guys can still get going, bring more equity to the table, or they would have to wait.
Okay. So you say it's more on like the client's struggle. So you're being able to like deal with the issue, but the client is the one trying to find more equity for the project.
Right. I mean, from our, from our standpoint, right. I mean, we can still certainly finance the project. From the client's point of view, right. I mean, we're not going to be able to just lever up with additional debt just because the input prices went up, right? I mean, the way that we would be able to lever up is if the end value of what they're building had gone up. right? So it's really an economics decision for, the developer. Like, does the project still make sense at this level with this amount of equity?
Well, along the same line of that, if these kind of projects starting to make sense. So with like retail markets moving more towards online, how do you see that affecting commercial real estate in sense of like shopping departments and like malls and different locations like that?
Well, it's a good question. And actually, there was some recent data about regional kind of enclosed malls that just came out. They are now at their highest vacancy levels, I think almost ever. I think it was over 10%, or something like that. So I mean, malls have been struggling for a long time, and COVID and stuff like things that happen like COVID are really trying to accelerate this, right? So what it did was it just accelerated trends that were already existing. People moving more to online shopping from retail. There are malls that have really, I think, position themselves to win. For instance, Woodfield Mall on Schaumburg, you guys may know. They really kind of pivot a little bit and focus more on like experiential stuff to drive people to the mall. And then once you get there for the experience, you're surrounded by shops, right? So that mall in particular has done really well, and you don't see a lot of vacancy there. Other kind of legacy malls that are anchored by like JCPenney and Macy's, stuff like that, and kind of use those anchors to drive people to the infill space. I think those are the guys that are really going to struggle and tap in and all.
Yeah, definitely. On your website, it says, quote, applicants for $1 million or 40 million receive the same focused attention. So what does that process look like? And then how do you make sure those smaller loan clients are getting the same attention as the larger loan clients?
Right. So in commercial real estate, really, like, it's the same process. And it's ultimately kind of like the same amount of work. It really doesn't matter, like, if it's $1 million loan or a $30 million loan or a $50 million loan, right? Ultimately, it's the same process. It's generally the same amount of work. So that's what we really mean. And we don't, I don't really differentiate, between if somebody comes in the door and they're looking for a $2 million loan or a $30 million loan. We run the same process and we give them the same amount of attention. That doesn't mean one gets less or one gets more than the other. It's just that, hey, I'm not focused on just what the end, kind of commission is. We're here to do loans, and we have a good, sophisticated, efficient process that we use. Doesn't matter what kind of the loan size is.
Definitely. Great. Okay, so if someone wants to get contact with you, whether that be a client or someone else, how would they do that? Is it email, phone number?
If you are looking for me, I'm probably the easiest guy to contact on earth. We're extremely available through, just give me a call directly, email. You can call our business line. One of our A's will answer. I'm out there on LinkedIn, website, however you want to handle it. There's probably 100 different ways to get in contact with us.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us on this Chicago Business Spotlight. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks so much. Likewise.
Yep. Have a great day.
You too.